And I'm going to keep the mic because I also suffer from the disadvantage of not being able to stand behind a podium for very long. So we've got this session. This has come up a couple of times. It was mentioned kind of in brief the last session that we had. The idea of the advanced manufacturing. What is it? What are we looking to do with it? Even the last couple of days when Dr. Shuren kicked off the kind of the Medaya stakeholder summit that we were having, he mentioned it. He said, you know, it's a focus area. So I kind of want to spend some time and talk about this, what it is that's going on, what we're trying to do. Hopefully not scare anybody, because I know part of it is, are we piling on a new activity, new initiative? That's not the intent. So we'll get through that, and maybe I can answer some questions of what we've got. So just to ground everybody in some of the efforts, and you'll see this come up a couple of times, we, from a agency standpoint, CDRH, we were given some budget appropriation with targeted focuses. First one, developing a new framework, that will include a voluntary program for device manufacturers. Right? That's part of what you see going on. That's the VIP effort. That's a lot of what's happening and being developed along the side. The Medaya activities. This one, FDA will recognize third-party certifiers and offer regulatory incentives for manufacturers to demonstrate capability and transparency. And the last bit of that, including adopting practices and technologies that increase innovation, reduce costs, and improve quality. That's the piece that is also part of all this that we're trying to try to enable and drive through. So with that, what is advanced manufacturing? Thoughts? Insights? How do you guys perceive it?
I don't know, I'm sure everybody has a different interpretation of it. At Illumina, we have an organization. It's known as the Factory of the Future. And it's headed up by a vice president and has a full staff. The purpose of that is to basically bring advanced manufacturing to Illumina. And that means basically putting in the degree of automation and sensing and signal gathering that allow us to make the product better, to better improve the manufacturing process and to better improve the quality of the process that is involved in manufacturing. That involves people who can understand data, people who can do natural language processing, people who can actually get information out of data analysis and feed that back into making the process better.
Anybody else? Other thoughts? Agreed? Yeah? So I like the idea there of the data integration, better data, and you'll see how this starts to kind of down the road weave into maybe what we're talking about with Medaya, some of the other focuses and activity and control. But just throwing some stuff up there. This is actually just thoughts, definitions that came out from manufacturing.gov, which has got a definition around advanced manufacturing, White House statement on what it is. That idea of what it enables and what it contextualizes is still something that isn't a single definition or source just yet. So what we're thinking about and what we've been talking about and driving to is not advanced manufacturing. What happened? Yeah. Is that battery issue? Those apples. No bias there. Yeah, the battery's dead. You got it. Good? Excellent. It's that idea that, the advanced manufacturing isn't simply about the technology, right? One of the things that we even learned with some of the people who are implementing these things, people who had success implementing them, it's two pieces of it, right? There's a people component and then there's a technology component. If the culture isn't there, the technology is going to make it worse. If the technology doesn't, and you have a great culture and you don't put in the right technology in the right spaces, you can't scale and you start to have other issues and other struggles. So I think from the standpoint of what we were doing, we're trying to look at it from that lens of both sides. Let's see here. We'll start actually giving me a chance to actually get to this. Seems right. There we go. All right. So one of the things that we talk about internally when we try to give the message around advanced manufacturing is there's the organizational portion of it, right? The people, the practices, the behaviors, what's happening there. There's lots of different ways to tackle that. Some of them are, these types of activities, the practice areas that are governed by CMMI, the, other things that you could do. I think the idea of project management and planning, that whole construct that CMMI looks at, that's all about driving that culture, that behavior, and those pieces. And then you get all the other process technology portions, right? That's when we talk about the computer technology, advanced simulation, prototyping, all the things that I think you start to associate with that digitization portion of it. What we wanted to do, because when we got out early on in the case quality efforts and started to engage with companies and look at, well, we could just get data from their systems, and then we realized that a lot of companies weren't investing in their systems and didn't have the systems. We thought we had an early win. We just fixed it. Tell everybody to use technology and we're good to go. Then we ran into the other hurdle, right? Culture isn't there. The focus isn't there. So, a lot of what happened and what we ran into in early stages and what we decided to do with regards to the VIP program and using the appraisal methodology was to start to tackle that piece first because everybody said that needs to be there. If it's not there, it doesn't matter what you're doing on the other end. All right. This is stuff, and you'll see I steal heavily in my slides from other people who presented to us. So, this came actually from an opportunity we went to last week with what's known as MXD, their Manufacturing Times Digital. They are one of 14 advanced manufacturing institutes across the U.S. that actually have a national mandate to help drive different focus areas of improvement to make manufacturing, especially within the U.S., more competitive. But this one was focused around manufacturing, digitization around manufacturing, securing the supply chain. They've got a DoD mandate to secure the supply chain. But this is the type of information I want to kind of just draw attention to the idea of something Siemens had shared with one of their more advanced manufacturing facilities, the one that's kind of the Intelligent 4.0, Manufacturing 4.0 driven site. But look at the, the kind of production rates, 1 per second that they're doing. They manage 1,300 products, and they're able to quickly shift that agility in production through them. That's their Six Sigma defect rate. So it's phenomenal numbers that they're able to generate given the rate of change and the capability of production that they've got. Some of this stuff came actually, the next one, from McKinsey reports in terms of benefits when companies have started adapting, not just the technology, but the practices that go along with it. More, even within the medical device or the regulated space, adjusting their quality system to be more agile, like what you see in typical software development stages. Again, yep, sorry. Can you hear me? Yep. I'm going to pause for a moment, or I'll stall for a moment. So before we go into some of the other stuff that's on there, we had this chance to kind of get out there and see with regards to what's going on in other industries. What are they using? What are the technologies? Where is their focus? And we brought a lot of FDA staff, and we had a chance with, I think the first day, where we had a lot of manufacturers in the device space come and join, do the same thing, so that we can actually get reactions, context, have good dialogue around barriers that are perceived, And it was a really interesting discussion. And then we spent the next couple of days there as just FDA to have internal dialogue on how do we shift those perceptions and that dynamic. I think they're trying to fix the screen. And you'll hear a little bit more about that as we go through, and I'll talk about why this is such a focus in a second. But there was a lot of, even just from an FDA standpoint, connecting of the dots, realization that I get it. I get what this does. I get what it enables. And what we can do differently because of these types of technologies, the control it enables. So there is a more ready interest in this moving forward. It is part of what we're looking to do to help enable the industry. This does not mean, again, that we're adding on another project here specifically, but we'll highlight that as we keep going forward with some of the things we've got. I think you saw it on there. One of the things that we wanted to clear up right away was the idea of automation. People always figure out, and that came up actually even during the discussion with the manufacturers. How does the FDA feel about automation? Using AI in manufacturing? Yes, it's on there. We support it. We want that to be the case. We know it. We've seen it. We've seen it in other industries. We've seen it with some of the manufacturers who've been implemented some of the systems now with regards to their manufacturing execution systems, their controls along that piece. It enables better control, better quality. That down the road delivers a better outcome. So it's not something that we're ever against. I don't think we were ever very vocal about being for it, and that's kind of what we're trying to shift the dynamic on. Good, excellent. So let's go on here to the next slide. So why is this important? And as a a tribute to my wife, I promised I'd get Baby Yoda into a presentation somewhere. So, so there's a lot of stuff that's going on right now, right? One of them being these practices, this information set, this data can help improve the resilience of that device supply chain, enhancing domestic production. This is a big focus point right now, given everything that's going on. And I'll ask the question, even just from your standpoint, COVID-19 is affecting a lot of things. How's it impacting manufacturing? How's it impacting your ability to get material in and supply? How are you managing some of that activity and effort? So I think this has exposed a lot of things that we can actually do better. And I'm not saying, that it isn't being managed well, that there isn't a lot of commitment and capability from the, the device space or the ecosystem, but we can do better. I do recall when Maria hit the medical device community, the manufacturers did a phenomenal job of trying to manage the situation and what occurred in some of those capacities. But it is a big focus area. The agency's got a commitment. This is now an agency-wide initiative, the idea of advancing manufacturing technologies. The commissioner was at the appropriations briefing yesterday and opened with some of that comments, was questioned from a congressional, members on how is FDA focused on improving that, because it's been highlighted as a concern. So this is something that the whole agency is really looking to take a proactive approach on. Again, stolen from Siemens because we were there. But I really do like the idea of how this kind of quantifies the whole product life cycle and that digital integration piece. The opportunity and capability of what we've got. And we talk about the interactions that we have right now, even as a regulator and an industry. It's all at that kind of the product point. There's already a physical product delivered. We all know where's the best chance to kind of build in quality, right? Move it earlier. Get the interaction earlier in the design phases. How do you do that? What do you need to look at to drive things? How do you drive more of that integration to the life cycle? We talk about even information that could be fed into a construct like Medias or even the VIP program. There's data. How do you drive better and more improved data to help feed that, make it easier, more seamless for the process? we like digital evidence. We've got a whole initiative on it. You saw some of it earlier this morning that Pamela presented on the work that FDA has done with MDIC on simulation. There's a lot of value here, trying to make sure that it's clear that we accept that. We're trying to move more towards that. There's work that we need to do to make sure internally we figure out how to incorporate that into our evidence processes and our reviews. But there's a whole team dedicated to helping that process through and helping this be more adopted across the agency. What we did learn last week and what a chance to see during the MXD visit is it doesn't just stop at the initial design and simulation phase. That capability, that simulation, really is applicable across the whole product lifecycle. So when we talk about opportunities to do things faster, to do things better, to get more information, to do it more cost effectively, there's other areas that we haven't even touched about that might even be easier implementations right now. The idea of, using this to augment IQ, OQ, PQ, maybe even accelerate, substitute, reduce the cost of needing physical products. Supporting PMA, manufacturing sections, closing out CAPA effectiveness, that's always been a question. Big one. Can we consider that type of information, that digital exchange, the simulations going on, to scale or transfer manufacturing in situations like what's going on right now are happening? I like this one. Can we come up with a new submission experience? All right? This, although now it's in PDF form. And no, when internally we're trying to come up with other alternatives, there's the pilot now for some of these smart templates to help kind of also reduce that. But can we shift the way this looks, the way this works, and make it a completely different experience? Something that is more tangible, easier for the reviewer to kind of get their hands around what's going on with the product. Not just that PDF and maybe some pictures or images that are there, right? How do we get that engagement earlier to get that information, the data? Again, I go back to what the commissioner stated yesterday, 3 big objectives. First one, make the agency much more data-driven, much more effective with the use of all the data that we've got. Second one was focused on improving the competition within the drug community. And the third one was about advanced manufacturing, right? And securing the domestic supply chain for both drugs and medical devices. What does it mean for you? Again, we talked about a lot of, what we're looking to drive, but I go back to the 3 key things that when we think about quality, continuous improvement, what we're looking to get at, it's always about visibility, right? Can I see the issue? Can I get to the issue? Can I find it? Can I address it? How quickly can I see that, right? That's speed. How quickly can I resolve it? How quickly can I improve it? And the control, right? Because it's all about, even the quality system regulation, it's all about demonstrating your processes are in control. You are in control of what's going on. And these cycles feed each other. You get better about one thing, it leads to an improvement in another, gives you better control. That's really that whole drive for continuous improvement, right? You're improving in any one of these buckets or areas, you're driving a continuous improvement mindset. But it does enable other things, as you saw in some of the other industries, like what's going on with the other Hamburg plant, right? It is business value, significant that you can gain from that. Production flexibility, this is of interest to us, and agility. When situations like this happen, how quickly can you shift? How quickly can you manage? How do we enable the industry to be more flexible and agile for that? Capacity increases, responsiveness to issues, improved product performance. I think we've seen that even with the participants right now and showing what they're able to do from just the feedback and inputs when you're giving them an opportunity to just drive what's strategically important for them in the appraisals. But the end goal is always that improved patient outcomes. And I think all of these pieces do drive and deliver that improved patient outcome. So, supporting activities. I want to put that as supporting activities because, again, I don't want people thinking that we're saying this is an ask of another project just at this point in time. what we've heard and what we've seen is that companies want to move there. They want to be able to engage and want to be able to enact some of these technologies that make sense. They want to be able to bring in some of these practices. We are doing a lot of work to help enable that within the construct of the VIP. Madias is looking to help address another need within the space. What we're trying to do now to help support these efforts and initiatives is clear the path, right? That's really the whole point of this. You know, some of the things that we started tackling early on is, you know, can we drive and then issue some guidance on that construct of software assurance for this space to make it a little bit more clear what our expectations and acceptability is so that it's easier to implement, less costly, and easier to keep up with the rate of change of the systems and tools. We worked with NDIC. They have a part of the BAA is to get in a landscape analysis so we can identify other barriers that maybe we need to tackle from either a policy standpoint, maybe case study standpoint. One of the things that stood out to me during the sessions we had at MXC is, I think from an FDA side, everybody kind of agreed that nothing in the reg says you can't do this, right? We've just not been clear on what needs to be done or the expectations around, and that's an easier activity to drive to. And what we saw wasn't so much that industry didn't know what to do or how to do it. It's how to do it effectively and say, yeah, FDA, this is, and for FDA to say that's satisfactory. So there's a lot of opportunities for faster ways to do this, especially in collaboration and these types of communities. This is new. Everybody heard we got funding from the COVID-19 stuff, some additional funding. Some of it was specifically targeted, which is something that, you know, we kind of closed on and got out yesterday. One of them is to help accelerate the Madias development and launch. Because again, it's about that community engagement, that community data focus, the ability to solve bigger problems and identify issues. So that's new. We don't know exactly what that necessarily means yet, but it's in there as a bullet. And the other one is, again, to help target, so how does FDA accept these technologies in an easier, faster fashion, make it more streamlined for manufacturers looking to implement? Ideally, to establish a independent clearinghouse that will help get these technologies evaluated quickly, done, implementation strategies and plans in place, and then something that FDA just says, we're good, go and move on. So again, this isn't necessarily about work that you have to do, but it's work that we are doing to help support any activities or efforts that you're engaged in along the way. And if there's anything that you can think of that would help drive or incentivize this, we're here. Reach out, and this is a bigger priority. And like I said, it's not just CDRH. This is actually driven across the 3 centers. And the funding that came back was allocating funding to drive equivalent activities across each of the centers, Stever and Cedar. Any questions on the advanced manufacturing stuff?
I'd like to know your opinion. You know, it seems that it's somewhat of a shift in at least in what maybe manufacturers perceive or what the FDA would like to see. But you know, in other industries like semiconductor automation has been name of the game, you know, for decades. But in the medical device industry, it's hard to even find equipment that would automate processes, just because maybe there hasn't been a push from manufacturers, because maybe somewhat the regulation got in the way. I would like to have your opinion on that.
So I think let me start with the idea of the regulation getting in the way. Especially with what we're trying to do now, we're trying to set the stage and make the point that that shouldn't be the case. If it is, we need to know what it is so we can figure out how to shift it. Now, was our lack of clarity or lack of guidance on things probably not providing the right focus, or at least the right balance of what industry found or needed to do to be acceptable? Yes, we own some of that. We're trying to fix that moving forward. I think the idea of what you mentioned, the fact that semiconductor and automation's been the name of the game for ages, that's what we've learned. We said that, you know, maybe in some cases, risk is too high. I get it in the med device space. We don't want to be the first to try something radically new. But there's a lot that's that's out there that's really applicable that we shouldn't be hesitant to adopt or accept. The idea of, you know, it not being tailored to the med device space, I think opening some of this up will help get those discussions going and maybe come up with some ways to enable and tailor that. If there's anything that we can do with regards to helping support some of that, perfect. The other piece of this to remember is the technology is one thing, but not every practice, not every process needs automation, right? So do it where it makes sense. That's where the idea of the balance of what's happening culturally versus what's needed from a just your data standpoint, your improvement standpoint is the balancing act. What we would like to enable and say it's okay to do this, and this should be very straightforward, and we should minimize the burden around these types of activities and implementations, and we're willing to commit to being part of that solution. So hopefully that'll help. I mean, there were places that in some of the things that we saw, and it was a great response where I asked the questions that there was just a slew of work going on that looked like it would have been great for automation. And I asked why they weren't automating, and the answer was the work is way too fine and too precise in terms of the category and what it was touching that it could not be automated. And the company had found ways to manage it through just the behavioral pieces, better interaction, moving the people in the right way, keeping their focus, and it was working out great. So again, the answer isn't necessarily jump to automation, but the idea is maybe there's information, there's data that can be fed into the system that will help give insight of the process. So going, you're still getting the right controls around things, and that's information that will help make the process more agile and more flexible. Any other questions?
I guess make a comment that this is a great topic because if I think about product quality and I think about, you know, we talked about CMMI appraisal and companies getting better. A lot of the investments in systems and processes, the advanced technology is where we're going to get a lot of the gains that meet both of those. And so I think it's a great topic to have within the sphere of case for quality that we're talking about.
Thank you.
Lines. And Stephanie, to your question, one of the things we found really helpful, and Cisco, you touched on this as well, is sometimes automation isn't the answer for every problem. We showed that model with visibility, control, and speed. I don't know if everyone in the room is familiar with the FDA's guidance on continued process verification. We found that a great place to start because it builds that cultural element of if I understand my process, even if I don't change it fundamentally from a technological level, that visibility alone enables me to make smarter control choices. And by having smarter control choices, speed is the byproduct and higher quality is the byproduct. So I love this topic. It's super exciting and very close to where I work in my day-to-day. But I love that the focus isn't on that is the only option and that it is a progression to move towards these technologies where it makes the most sense for your business.
Thank you. And just by the way, that control, speed, visibility stuff that I got mentored into when I was at IBM, and I thought, wow, genius, and found out those are the principles of the Shingo. I think I got a little suckered in terms of, you know, just my mentor taking credit for some things, but that's correct. I mean, that really is what it's focused on, driving those behaviors that will enable all that.
I think in making choices on automation, we have found, because we look at this all the time, because some of the facilities are high volume, low mix, and some are exactly the opposite, low volume, high mix. And depending on what the scenario is, the benefit and return on investment and automation changes picture in the sense that sometimes it's not so smart to automate operations that are very high mix with lower volumes, and sometimes it's quite smart to automate processes that are high volume but low mix. That's not to say you can't do it for high mix and low volume, but I think those are the types of methodologies that we need to understand how to arrive at a cost-benefit analysis and then sell that to our senior management so that the right investment decisions can be made from a return on investment perspective.
Again, I think that's it is a fair point. I think the point of what happened with even the Omberg site, right? They lots of production, but that ability, if you look at even the rate of change that they've got with 1,300 products, it's still doable. It takes a high degree of maturity both in their business processes, the people culture, and then the systems that are appropriate to support it. And it didn't happen overnight. It took time to get there, but it's the idea of, again, like every theme that we've had over the last couple of days, just get started. What do we need to do to just get this thing started? So, no more questions. I'll be here all day. Everything.